My mom didn't call. She didn't even hesitate. She just texted me, "Please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding." A second later, my sister, Brianna, liked it. Like my absence was some kind of gift to everyone. I stared at the screen, feeling that quiet snap inside me, the kind you don't hear but you never forget. So I typed back, "Great choice." And with that, I stopped being their safety net. They had no idea what was coming next. Before I tell you everything, tell me where you're listening from, so I know I'm not alone. I wish I could tell you that message shocked me, but the truth is, it only confirmed something I had spent years trying not to see. My name is Natalie Parker, and in my family, I was never the favorite, not even close. I was the reliable one, the organized one, the one who always showed up with a plan and a payment method. That was my assigned role long before I was old enough to understand I could choose a different one. From the outside, we looked polished, almost enviable. My mother, Denise, carried herself like she was born to host perfect gatherings, her smile sharp enough to cut through a room. My father, Raymond, drifted through life, quietly stepping aside whenever conflict approached. And then there was my sister, Brianna, beautiful, adored, and endlessly excused. When she walked into a room, people made space. When I walked in, people handed me responsibilities. The strange thing is, I didn't mind for a long time. I'm a project manager here in Colorado, and I like structure. Spreadsheets, timelines, color-coded priorities, they make sense to me. People don't always. So when the family asked for help planning Brianna's wedding, I said yes, the way I always did. It wasn't even a question. I handled the deposits, the venue coordination, the lighting team, the catering schedules. Every bill landed on my desk, and I paid them without hesitation. Not because Brianna deserved it, but because my mother expected it. There was only one person who ever truly saw me, my grandmother, Evelyn. She had this way of listening that made time slow down. In her small backyard garden, she'd trim roses while telling me that strength isn't only in what you carry, but also what you refuse to pick up. I didn't understand that then. I thought being strong meant saying yes to everything. But leading up to the wedding, little things kept tightening around me, like strings someone else was pulling. Denise would compliment Brianna's choices, then look at mine as if they were inconveniences. Raymond kept repeating how grateful Brianna was, even though Brianna hadn't thanked me once. And during one planning meeting, when I suggested adjusting the guest count to match the budget, Brianna didn't even look up from her phone. She just sighed and said, "Nat, can't you just make it work? You always do." That sentence sat in my chest for days. Still, I pushed through. I visited my grandmother before every major decision, letting the quiet of her home reset me. She sensed something was wrong, but I didn't want to burden her. She had already lived through enough family disappointment. On the morning the text came, the one uninviting me, I was sitting in my apartment reviewing the final payment schedule. Sunlight hit the necklace Grandma Evelyn had given me, a small gold pendant she said represented clarity. Funny how clarity always shows up right before something breaks. That was the day I realized I wasn't part of their celebration. I was just funding it. And for the first time, that truth didn't hurt. It steadied me. In the days after that message, everything in the family group chat looked strange. Too cheerful, too curated. Like they were all performing a version of unity that didn't include me. That was the first sign. The second came disguised as excitement. Denise announced she wanted a wedding week, a whole series of pre-events to impress Brianna's future in-laws. She said it lightly, as if she were talking about brunch plans, but her eyes drifted toward the envelope on the counter, the one containing Grandma Evelyn's emergency savings. My stomach dropped. "Mom," I said slowly, "that's not what that money is for." She blinked, confused by my tone. "Natalie, don't be dramatic. Brianna's only getting married once." I looked to Brianna, hoping for some recognition of the weight behind my mother's suggestion. But she just adjusted her new designer dress, the one I'd quietly paid for, and shrugged. "It's not a big deal, Nat. Grandma doesn't even use that money." My heart clenched. They had talked about it. Maybe he even planned it. Later that week, I took my grandmother to a dress fitting. She moved slowly but proudly, her hand warm in mine. While she stood in the mirror, smoothing the fabric over her hips, she whispered, "I heard your mother talking." They're preparing things without you. Her voice had that trembling softness truth always carries. I swallowed hard, unsure whether to admit what I already knew. The fitting assistant called us over before I could respond. 2 days later came the moment everything clicked into place. I walked into my mother's living room to drop off the finalized rehearsal dinner timeline. Brianna sat on the couch, her thumb hovering over her phone. "Oh," she said, noticing me. "Didn't know you were coming by." Her tone wasn't hostile. It was worse, dismissive. Denise glanced at me and said, "We're confirming the guest seating. Brianna found a better layout than the one you sent." Better. Not kinder, not fairer, just better because it came from Brianna. Then Brianna's screen lit up with a message that uninvited me, and I watched her tap the little heart next to it. A single like. It didn't make a sound, but something inside me gave a painful crack, like thin ice splitting beneath a quiet stab. Brianna didn't even look up. It's for the best, Nat. Everyone agrees. Everyone. I remember staring at them, the air suddenly too heavy to breathe. Grandma's words echoed in my mind. They're preparing things without you. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a lapse of judgment. This was intentional, coordinated, carried out with the same casual cruelty someone uses when swatting away an inconvenience. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't dealing with the mistake. I was dealing with the plan. The night after Brianna liked the message that erased me, I sat alone with the wedding payments pulled up on my laptop. Line after line glowed back at me. Venue deposits, lighting adjustments, catering schedules, floral installments, approved and paid by me. It looked less like a celebration and more like a ledger documenting my own erasure. For years, I told myself they didn't mean to take advantage of me, that I was helping, that my support made things easier. But staring at those payments, I saw the truth. They weren't relying on me. They were consuming me. My phone buzzed, another message in the family thread. "Brianna again. Mom wants my layout instead." No please, no thank you, no acknowledgement of the hours I spent building a plan that worked. Cruelty becomes mundane faster than anyone expects. I closed the laptop, the quiet in my apartment suddenly sharp and clarifying. This was the moment everything began to change. I opened a private message to my mother and typed 2 words, "Great choice." For a moment, my reflection stared back at me from the dark window, calm, composed, a woman who had finally stepped out of a role she never chose. Then I added the second sentence they weren't expecting. "Then you'll be free of my payments, too." No explanation, no rage, just facts. I hit send, and the silence that followed felt almost holy. I opened my laptop again, this time with purpose. One by one, like pulling threads from a tapestry, I reviewed every contract attached to the event. Catering, lighting, rentals, coordination, decor. Every single agreement was tied to my personal account. Every approval was under my name. The authority they assumed had always been mine. I didn't need to argue. I just needed to stop enabling them. I emailed each vendor individually and succinctly referenced the agreement sections in timelines. "We will not be moving forward. Please cancel the pending invoice. Do not process additional payments." I didn't disclose family drama. This wasn't revenge. It was boundary setting. Clean, professional, irreversible. As I worked, a strange peace filled the room. Not satisfaction, not vengeance, but alignment. Like I was finally acting in a way that matched the truth of what I felt. Around midnight, there was a soft knock at my door. It was Grandma Evelyn. Her small frame seemed even smaller in the hallway light. She stepped inside and sat on the couch, smoothing her skirt the way she always did when she was gathering courage. "I know they hurt you," she said quietly, "but you don't have to carry them anymore." Her voice trembled, and that, more than anything, broke something open in me. My family had treated her like an afterthought, a resource to be used. She knew what it meant to love people who didn't protect you. I took her hand. "I'm done carrying them, Grandma. I'm choosing us this time." She nodded, eyes shining not with sadness, but with something like pride. Before she left, she whispered, "When they come home, we'll be ready." And for the first time in my life, I believed her. The morning they were scheduled to return felt strangely quiet, like the city itself was holding its breath. Grandma sat at the kitchen table, folding and unfolding the same napkin, her eyes drifting toward the window every few seconds. I brewed tea just to keep my aunts occupied. The steam warmed my face as reality settled deeper into my chest. This was the day everything would shift. I checked my phone one last time. No messages from my family, not even a courtesy update about their flight. Of course not. As far as they were concerned, I didn't exist unless they needed a solution. But today, they were going to need something else entirely. "Are you sure you're ready?" my grandmother asked softly. I nodded. More than ready. We arrived at the airport earlier than necessary. Grandma held my arm as we walked through the terminal, her presence the anchor I'd needed my whole life. Steady, warm, honest. Every step felt like reclaiming ground I didn't know I'd lost. Our attorney, Ethan Cole, met us near the arrivals hall. He was calm and collected, the kind of person who made chaos feel manageable. He nodded to us before flipping open a folder. "Everything's in order," he said. "We'll wait until they exit baggage claim. They'll likely approach you first. Be prepared for that." "Prepared for their version of the story," I murmured. Ethan offered a faint smile. "People who depend on you rarely prepare to face a world where you've stopped giving." My grandmother squeezed my hand. A ripple of movement pulled our attention to the sliding doors as passengers began spilling out with tired steps and crinkled clothing. Then I saw them. Denise leading the way, back straight, an expression sharp as if she'd returned triumphant. Brianna followed, dragging an oversized suitcase, her phone in hand, the way it always had been. Raymond walked behind them, tired-eyed and polite but reticent, the same face he always had when asked to choose. For a fleeting second, an old instinct tugged at me, the urge to greet them, to smooth things over, to stay small enough to keep the peace. But that version of me belonged to a life I no longer lived. My mother spotted us first. Confusion flickered across her face, quickly replaced with irritation. "What are you doing here?" she snapped, tightening her coat around her shoulders like armor. "We're not here to pick you up," Brianna said with a roll of her eyes. "We're not here to pick you up," I replied. Denise's mouth opened, then closed like a bird startled mid-flight. "You're here to apologize for ruining our wedding plans," my grandmother announced, steady and impossibly dignified. Ethan stepped forward before I could speak. "Good morning. I'm Ethan Cole. I represent Natalie Parker and Evelyn Parker in a matter requiring your immediate attention." He opened the folder, and the color drained from my mother's face. Brianna blinked rapidly, her breath coming in short little increments. "This must be a joke," Denise said, forcing a laugh. "A lawyer. For what?" "For the financial exploitation concerning wedding-related funds," Ethan replied evenly, handing her an envelope, "and for the attempted use of your mother's savings without consent." My mother snatched the document but didn't open it. "We didn't exploit anyone. Everything was agreed upon. Natalie offered to help, she always does." "That was the problem," I said quietly. "You expected it not because I wanted to, but because you refused to see me as anything other than a source of solutions." Brianna stepped toward me, jabbing a finger in my direction. "You abandoned your responsibilities. You ruined everything. All you had to do was stay out of the way." My grandmother echoed her voice, trembling but strong. A crowd had begun to form. Travelers slowed, murmuring as tension thickened the air. My mother hated scenes. Her cheeks reddened as she glanced around, as if public humiliation was somehow my fault, too. Ethan handed another packet to Brianna with crispness that made people lean in. "These are copies of the messages sent to Natalie, including the one uninviting her to the event. And this is documentation of the payment she made." I watched my mother's eyes flick from page to page, her jaw tightening. Brianna clutched the envelope like it might burn her. "What's this supposed to be?" asked Brianna, voice brittle. "Notice regarding the attempted redirection of your grandmother's emergency fund," Ethan replied, tone cool. "An account Natalie has been monitoring, as she is the only family member who has never withdrawn from it." My mother's hand shook as she shoved the documents back at him. "How dare you bring strangers into our private affairs?" she hissed. "You made it private when you pushed me out. You made it legal when you tried to use Grandma's savings because you ran out of mine." Brianna's fiancé stayed oddly quiet, jaw tight. "Look, can we all calm down?" he muttered.
"This is getting blown out of proportion. Blown out of proportion.
my grandmother repeated, eyes hard. You encouraged Brianna to ask for more money, more support, things she never earned. Something inside Brianna deflated. Her shoulders sagged, her bravado leaking away in slow, painful beats. She looked less like the glittering bride she'd imagined herself and more like a child caught doing something selfish. My mother's confidence began to crumble. We can fix this, she pleaded, eyes on me. Just tell us what you want, Nat. I took a breath, steady and sure. I want you to understand I'm done, I said. Done being your safety net, done paying for consequences you never learned from, done pretending we're a family when you treat me like a mistake. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Then Brianna whispered, So you're punishing us? I shook my head. No, I'm protecting myself. Ethan stepped in again. There are steps you'll need to follow. You'll have to respond to these notices within the given time frame. Until this matter is resolved, you're not permitted to access Mrs. Parker's accounts. My mother opened the envelope finally. Her eyes scanned the first line, and her expression crumbled. Fear replaced indignation. This could get us in trouble, she whispered. It already did, my grandmother replied. My mother's resolve dissolved. She looked between us, searching for some foothold. Natalie, please, we're family. I met her gaze with the clarity I'd earned the hard way. Family is supposed to protect each other, not just themselves. For the first time in my life, she didn't have an answer. Raymond stepped forward for the first time. I'm sorry, Nat. We should have done better. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from him, and I nodded, accepting the words without letting them excuse anything. Ethan gathered his folders. We're done here, he said. Grandma took my arm again, grip steady. As we turned to leave, my mother called after me. Natalie, what are we supposed to do now? I paused long enough to meet her eyes. Figure it out, I said, the same way you expected me to. I walked away not out of anger, but out of freedom. The first real freedom I'd felt in years. In the weeks that followed, everything settled the way truth always does, quietly, but permanently. The notices Ethan filed moved through the system. There were real boundaries around my grandmother's savings. No more borrowing, no more pressure disguised as family tradition. The account was protected, and so was she. I visited her more often. We'd sit in her small garden while she trimmed roses the way she had when I was a child. But this time, she didn't look tired. She looked lighter, as if she'd been holding her breath for years without realizing it. The wedding plans dissolved almost overnight. Vendors sent confirmations of canceled payments. Messages trickled into my phone, some angry, some embarrassed, some painfully silent. I didn't respond to any of them, not out of spite, but because there was nothing left to say. One afternoon, my grandmother rested a hand over mine. You saved both of us, she whispered. I shook my head. I didn't feel like a savior. I felt like someone finally stepping into her own life. The truth settled in me like a comfortable coat. For once, I wasn't fixing chaos. I was choosing purpose. So I applied for a volunteer position at a local advocacy center that supported older adults, people like my grandmother, who deserve protection long before anyone notices they need it. Volunteering there changed how I saw the world. I met people whose stories were small tragedies repeated until resignation filled their days. They thanked me for holding a hand, making a call, reading a letter. I realized the same instincts that once made me shoulder my family's burdens could be channeled into something that honored people's dignity instead of erasing my own. Love, I had believed, meant caring everything for the people who claimed they needed me. But real love, the kind that heals instead of drains, never asks you to disappear so others can shine. My family's choices didn't define me. My boundaries did. If this story resonates, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with friends who need to hear it, and comment your perspectives or key lessons learned.